ready to jump into this first game. As KT Rolster is going to be starting on the blue side, and we'll see what they go for. Obviously, in recent weeks, the main thing in the pick ban phase has been ban Senna. And I would assume that DK can start off with that eventually. They will take away the Pigeon as well.
Unsurprisingly, given that both of these teams do love it, we have seen the Taliyah counterpick be very popular on this patch, but not be very successful. Part of that is the teams that have played it don't think that it's necessarily all up to the strength of the pick itself. But it is important to note that neither Showmaker nor BDD, even though we know they can play it, things like Akali, Yone, we don't necessarily associate it with them quite as much as we do with players like Zeka. So not too surprising to see them just take it away instead here. Orianna, once upon a time, absolutely top of the line when it comes to draft priority, has really fallen off. A Varus pick here is the obvious one. Kalista is another that I think should be taken a look at here, and I'm pretty sure that that is what KT might be looking towards. The Renata ban going to dissuade the opponent from picking up maybe like a Varus in response, and I think that DK themselves see as well that they don't want the Kalista to be picked up. So Varus, win rate, not the best, but it is really one of those situations, again, where it just gets picked by everyone. So it doesn't really tell you that much about the strength of the pick.
The ban rate is very high, so that tells you what the teams think about the pick.
Yeah.
The fact that it gets banned ahead of these other picks that we have seen banned in this game at times definitely shows that it is quite strong. And certainly going to be on the mind of aiming, you know, what do we want to play into this? In the bottom lane, the Smolder is available, but that's kind of been a little bit wishy-washy in terms of trying to get to the late game on an even footing. Karma is going to be picked up here, also having a pretty low win rate, but generally thought as still a strong pick.
Showmaker has also been quite successful on this. There is, of course, an opportunity for Kellen to play it. Can go for a, you know, now not really. Lucian Karma is not really what comes to mind when you talk about successful bot lanes. So the Nami lock-in, seemingly a no-brainer here on the third rotation. Karma, a lot of prio, so very early on already, DK trying to opt into a lot of early aggression, as this is a hint towards what variety of Varus we are going to see. And Varus and Nautilus go way back, quite a strong combination. We'll see what BDD wants to lock in here against the Karma.
Yeah, I'd say I wouldn't mind going for a tank pick either, like a Sejuani or a Cassante even, just because you know you're playing into the Lucian, he's going to have a hard time getting through the tanks. It is Pyoshik, so it looks like he's actually instead just going to lock in the Lee Sin and look to make some plays in this game number one.
Now there is basically unless they do actually want to play, but I think Showmaker's just hovering, one of his favorite old champions. My expectation here would be a jungler for Lucid. Rel is the one that really comes to mind. Those are not champion Showmaker, come on. But instead, you have to pick up the Nami here, unfortunately, for Lucid. Probably going to get banned away, as Rel was already taken away. So, never mind. On that one, it's Lucian Nami. We know what it does. We've seen it countless times. And maybe that's what lulled me into a little bit of a dizzy here in the early game of this draft.
Taliyah going to be taken away from BDD. Taliyah, another one of those picks that has kind of a low win rate, but in the hands of a guy like BDD, it is a totally different champion. And same with Faker we saw yesterday. Obviously, that was kind of a one-sided matchup, but still a strong pick in the minds of these strong teams. As TF also going to be taken off the board, and Udyr. So potentially looking for that Cassante, which still hasn't been looked at or banned or anything just yet.
That's 100% the pick up here if it doesn't get banned away on R4. As so many of the drafts have gone, this really is the same kind of flowchart. Nocturne going to get taken away even without the Orianna, who probably will get picked up by KT Rolster here, I would imagine. as one of the top tier picks that is still open, even without the Nocturne ban going to come through.
It's very interesting that they banned Nocturne. You mentioned, you know, the synergy with the Orianna, but Lucid hasn't played one game of Nocturne. He's played a lot of Vi, which was available, and Poppy is also available, saying, okay, we can play a jungle, but also if you're going to pick Cassante, we can play that in the top lane. So a bit of flex. You don't know what you're going into here on the side of KT Rolster.
Orianna already has 2 ball delivery systems, Lee in particular, quite strong. Although into Poppy can be a little bit more tough. Orianna still a great pick on the patch. Has dropped somewhat with the rise of the tank Azir, and I think team's getting a little bit better at playing around her as well. A blind Rumble would be something, and there must be something else that they don't want Cassante to get picked into, because I don't feel like many of the counter picks we've seen really have been that oppressive. You might even go for it here. If you do what we've seen the Aftershock variety get picked up a decent amount, Kingen can also just play one of his 2 most iconic champions, and we'll just lock in the Aatrox.
Yeah, Aatrox very strong nowadays, and Cassante just totally ignored. I do think that Aatrox can be very oppressive when it does come to the team fights, in the fact that he builds a whole bunch of damage and doesn't die. And as you mentioned, it's big comfort for the side of Kingen. It is a big threat in terms of damage. When you're already running the Karma, not a bad choice, I would say. The Rumble, definitely very interesting, especially when it was potentially blind, even though the Poppy was hanging there. It's like, well, this can easily get countered, and to have the Aatrox come out as the counter, in quotes, is pretty interesting.
Might be the main reason, as you point out, the Poppy flex. It's a rough matchup for Cassante, but I don't really feel like it invalidates him. We've seen Cassante actually do perfectly fine in that matchup. Don't want to go for it nonetheless, instead opting into having even more damage, and that does leave the KT composition without a reliable front line, whereas DK, they have Poppy and they have Lethality Aatrox, which really is also just front line, even though you know, he probably should be a bit squishier. Do you think KT have a lot of early game power though? Nautilus, Lee, and Varus can skirmish with the best of them. Add a Rumble to that if Perfect can make his way out of the lane. D+, gotta be careful because they need to do well in the early game as well with this type of comp.